Hey guys, this is Ian with Uncle Nearest. Thank you guys for joining us for Whiskey Wednesday. Yet again, we are here joined by two brand ambassadors from Paul John Whiskey, Koray and Devin. I'll let them introduce themselves in a little bit. But first, I'm going to send it over to my co-host of the night.
Hey guys, I'm Chastity. Uncle Nearest brand ambassador in Chicago as well. And happy to be here with you today for another Whiskey Wednesday Live to chat with our distillery peers. And we have some great guests tonight. I'm so excited to try this whiskey and learn more about your company.
Yeah, so Koray and Devin, I'll let you guys fight it out to see who can introduce themselves first.
It's the opposite. I will start. I'm Koray. I'm the West Coast Regional Manager for Paul John Indian Single Malt Whiskey. A big-time whiskey enthusiast. I'm also known as the Whiskey Monster. That's why you can see my name with @Whiskey Monster if Koray is pretty hard for you. Go, Devin.
My name is Devin Vilardi. I'm the Paul John East Coast Regional Manager and the brand ambassador in the Eastern United States. I'm happy to be here with you guys. I'm looking forward to drinking these whiskeys.
Great. Well, yeah. I'm very excited to taste your whiskey as well. You know, Indian whiskeys, Indian single malts aren't something that come across my table too often. So can you guys start us off? Talk about what is it that makes Paul John unique? Tell us about your whiskeys that you guys are pushing out.
So Paul John, I think, represent a whole kind of shift in the average whiskey drinker's repertoire. Like you mentioned, Indian single malts are new territory for a lot of whiskey drinkers. But one of the best things about where Koray and I work is that this is a world of whiskey explorers. You know, we have more and more people these days that are willing to try whiskeys from places that they never thought than ever. You know, and as my education kind of brought me up through whiskeys, kind of as different countries of origin at a time, when I got to the process of Indian single malt and how it mirrors and kind of innovates on the culture of whiskey making in other countries, I really found a great home. So I think Koray would agree with me. It's a really interesting process, and it's a new territory for a lot of people.
It is. I had never heard of it before, and I think it's just amazing.
Yeah.
It's really, as Devin said, it's an interesting world. Like, it's uncharted territories for a lot of us in the US and still the Europe. However, like, India has a really well recognized, let's say, expenditure in whiskey world, because they actually own 7 out of 10 brands, which are the world's best-selling whiskeys. Yeah, that's something that most of the people don't know.
Right.
Yeah, and it is so interesting, and we're seeing more whiskeys coming out of less than traditional places, which is really, really exciting. And I kind of wanted to know, with what you're doing and how you're producing, how does the land affect the flavor of Indian whiskey? What is the palate for a whiskey drinker in India?
So interestingly enough, people kind of ask us all the time. You know, Koray and I work with a lot of different kind of retailers and bar owners and bartenders who say to us, I've never heard of an Indian whiskey before. That's something that we're very ready for, right? Indian whiskey represents a whole different kind of shift in the maturation process, but so many of the elements of making whiskey do come down from this old Scottish traditions with innovations taken from across the industry. But with a climate like we have in Goa, which is the smallest state in India where our distillery is, it's a whole different kind of atmosphere than you might get in Kentucky or Scotland. I like to ask people all the time what the average angel share lost in a year in Kentucky is, or even in Scotland. And the answer is around 3 to 4%. That's in some of the hottest years. In Goa, we get an angel share that is often 8 to 10% per year.
Oh, wow.
So if we put away a barrel of whiskey and come back to it 10 years later, we have less than 20% of what we began with.
Wow.
Wow.
Would you say that concentrates the flavor?
I'd say it more than concentrates the flavor, because there's so many other depths that come out of humidity. And when we're talking about maturation of whiskey, of course, that represents a scientific process. You know, just like any part of distilling, it comes down to a chemistry. That chemistry that comes with, the reactions that happen in high humidity are often very different from the reactions in a lower humidity environment. So, yeah, it makes a big impact. We get a lot of extraction, focusing around American oak, because the strength of those barrels are sometimes the only barrels that can stand up to that atmosphere.
Yeah.
Also, you asked something about land. which is pretty important, especially for Paul John, because in India we are using only Indian barley that's harvested from the northern part of India, namely footsteps of Himalayas from the Rajasthan area, and that's a barley which is a little bit different than the traditional barley used. In traditional barley used in Scotland or in many of the other lands in the world, we are using 2-row barley. However, in India, we are using 6-row barley, which is technically having only 6 kernels. However, it creates a really huge impact on whiskey, which is heavy texture, like creamy texture, and at the same time, a lot of esters, which are creating those tropical nuances. That also has some cons like lower yields, lower alcohol ABV to attain. However, that's the most important part of like Indian land for us. That's the harvesting is really important for us. We also use a local water source from Goa, which is pretty much clean. And those 2 things are really important for us. And when we started to work for Paul John, this was really important for me. And at the same time, when they started the business over 10 years ago, they were saying that we have to make a unique Indian single malt whiskey, which sources all their products, all the possible products from India. That's why we are using the barley from India, water from India. Our copper pot stills are handmade in India.
That's amazing.
It's not bought from somewhere. And the only 2 things we import are barrels, which there are no oaks in India that can be used for whiskey maturation, and at the same time peat, which we import from Scotland to India.
Oh, okay. So your peat's coming out of Scotland.
Yeah.
And you're malting in India, I would imagine.
Yes. 6-row barley that Koray had mentioned also is a really big part of our signature, like he had said. That sweeter quality that when you guys taste this whiskey is going to be really noticeable. You can definitely give the credit to the 6-row barley.
Gotcha.
How many expressions do you have in your portfolio?
So you can actually see them behind me.
Oh.
So I set us up here. The newest release in the United States, which we're going to taste tonight, is our Paul John Nirvana, unpeated single malt whiskey. Koray and I are really, really excited about this one. I think that you guys are going to be pretty excited about it too. Our series is Paul John Brilliance, unpeated at 46%, edited, which is very gently peated at 46% as well, and bold, which is a bit more heavily peated at 46%. These expressions represent the flagship. On the other side over here, we have our Select Cast series. Oops. The Select Cast series is a part of our family that's actually growing. We originally had released the Select Cast series Classic, bottled at 55.2%. The Select Cask series Peated, 55.5%. Those have been out for a few years and have done really, really well for real kind of staunch whiskey drinkers that like a little bit more hair on the chest. Now, our newest releases are about to come out. That's our Paul John Oloroso and PX Select Casks. Occasionally we have some limited releases like the Christmas edition that we'll be tasting today. And you can see up above me over here, we have our Paul John Kanya, which was our 2018 Best Asian Whiskey in Jim Murray's Whiskey Bible. That's one of our most proud and the first of our Zodiac series. So the answer is right now we have about 10, but every now and then these special editions come out. We like to keep it hidden.
Gotcha. And what are your tastes of the line? What kind of speaks to you the most?
Oh,
all right.
I'm more of a Scotch. Like my palate is Scotch trained, so over the years I loved a lot of hey Shilton. Over the years I tried a lot of sherry oaks and stuff, but in Paul John range I am in love with the classic Select Cask because it actually gives all the depth of Paul John whiskey signatures. And our new whiskeys, which I just got for you, PX and Oloroso, these guys are going to be huge. Especially PX, I love it a lot, which I want to show you the color.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
Yeah,
it's a neutral color. Yeah. So these are to be here as soon as we get out the COVID situation.
They're actually on the ocean right now.
Oh, perfect. Awesome.
So my palate is a little bit more on the robust side, but I think what Paul John offers you with especially the core range, Nirvana and the 5 Nirvana flagships and the Select Casks are different whiskeys for different palates. So not everyone can love every whiskey in our range, but there is at least 1 or 2 whiskeys for every palate. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Would you say that the peated expressions or the non-peated expressions are more classic Paul John?
I cannot say that because we are experimenting with the peat too. So we have peat from Highlands, we have peat from Isla, 2 different peat styles, which is used differently in our whiskey. So edited has a blended peat, like both peat are used in a mild way. Then bold has Isla peat in it only, and the peated, the heavily peated whiskey, the 55.5 ABV, it has only Highland peat, which makes a different game. Then we have the Christmas editions, which has a mild peat with the sherry oak. So I can tell that what I can tell you about the signature flavor of Paul John is you definitely are going to feel the tropical fruits. You are definitely going to feel a chewy palate, like really big texture. And at the same time, you will feel the Manuka honey or like the herbaceous honey. And up to the peat, it will just be different. So those are the signature flavors you will have from Paul John.
Gotcha.
Wow.
Well, very cool. Well,
And I was going to ask, how easy is it to find Paul John? Are you all widely distributed? Will it be easy for our viewers to be able to find you at their boutique liquor stores?
Absolutely. We are available internationally now, 39 countries, which is actually very interesting because we actually initially released in the UK in 2012. So it's been a very, very fast expansion. In the United States, we're available in about 38 states. You might have to do a little looking for it, but obviously with some of our expressions kind of approaching into a different category, we expect to see that really blow up. That being said, guys like Koray and I are always here for anybody who wants to reach out and ask us where they can find it near them.
Yeah, for sure.
Perfect.
And especially during the times of COVID, we have given the importance for online stores and the shipping and the delivery. So whatever we can do to help, we are here for you.
It's the new way of the world.
Very much. It is a very new normal. I had a question come my way this evening on Instagram from Nizam, and he was really curious about the addition of color. So does Paul John include color in any of their expressions, or are you guys just letting it go?
So what I think Koray would agree with me is, what we should always talk about when we're talking about whiskeys from other parts of the world is the laws that surround them. We take into our education of whiskey the differences between bourbon and rye and Scotch and Japanese whiskey and Irish whiskey. It sometimes surprises people to find out that single malt from Scotland does allow the use of distiller's caramel, whereas American whiskeys don't. Now, in countries like India that are not initially known for making whiskey, they don't have these laws that define what they do. So sometimes it really comes down to the style of the distiller. Now, in the case of Paul John whiskey, I can't speak for all Indian whiskeys, but in the case of Paul John whiskey, our single malts never use any color or flavor. So we're really trying to talk about the Scottish style as well as the Indian climate. But we really adhere to the traditions. Now, as the category of Indian whiskeys and single malts in particular have grown, new laws have come around in India that have started to address some of these kind of restrictions. For example, to be an Indian single malt, you now have to be at least 3 years old. This is exciting news. I know it sounds small, but these emerging whiskey-making countries really need to kind of protect the spirit, just like we learned to do here in the United States and they learned to do in Scotland. Yeah. But when it comes to color or flavor, that's just not real whiskey, in my opinion, and Mr. Paul John's as well.
Okay. Great. Well, I think it's a good time to taste some whiskey.
Yes.
I think we've all been ready for it. Let's do it. So
how are we
starting? We're going to start with?
Well, your colleague dropped the bottle off my way a couple days ago.
Nirvana.
I believe he dropped off the Nirvana.
Beautiful box.
We have that one.
Yeah, it is a very beautiful box. Tell us a little bit about this whiskey. So, it's unpeated. It's malted barley. What else makes this unique?
So Nirvana is our new whiskey. It's our new line, which we actually needed in the US because our core range, starting from Brilliance, ending up at Peated, which were the 5 whiskeys. They're a little bit robust and they're like really high flavored, like characteristic, like here in the chest, as Devin said, they are starting from 46% ABV, which is still high for a lot of drinkers in the US and in the world, actually, because 40% is known to be the threshold for whiskey. And that's why we believe that we had to bring out a lighter entry-level whiskey. And at the same time, we wanted to use this whiskey for mixology, but we didn't want it just to be an ordinary young wild whiskey. So we wanted something that's high quality. So when Michael D'Souza was working on second fill bourbon barrels that we have, he just saw that the barrels are going very well. So all of our core range, except Nirvana, they are aged in first fill bourbon barrels firstly. Okay. And if Nirvana is the first offspring of our second and third fill barrels, that hence the color is really light. However, the taste is not mediocre at all. It's something incredible, because I tasted a lot of those single casks that we have at the distillery, and the second fills were amazing. And that's one of the genius coming from Michael. He just wanted to have this whiskey at this 40% ABV with the second and third fill. And you might not believe, but this is just a three-year-old whiskey. The minimum age is only 3 here.
Oh, okay.
And we were kind of mentioning the Indian climate, and as Koray mentioned, we typically use first fill bourbon barrels for our flagship and select cask series. That humidity, as I mentioned, is such an impact that it even gets down into the wood itself. What makes Kentucky and Scotland so phenomenal for aging whiskeys is the expansion of the barrels and then the retraction of the barrels, right, sucking all the whiskey into the wood and then squeezing it back out. Hot summers, cool winters. In India, these barrels just start expanding as soon as they get across the border. It's actually so interesting that the use that we have to go through, the little innovation that we have to use, we actually ship the barrels to India together, whole. We don't break them down. As you know, bourbon barrels are so great. They're abundant. They also, no glue, no staples. They just collapse into a FedEx box, easy to send anywhere. But as soon as those staves get into our climate, they start expanding. It becomes really, really difficult for our coopers to put them back together. So we really do have to ship them whole. In the process of aging, these barrels, they really soften up, and that juice gets all the way in there. So I think that's a big impact as well.
Okay. So how are these barrels then aging? Are you putting them into some temperature controlled environments, or are you letting them sit in the wild?
So okay, there's an opera coming from
Guilty. So my partner is an opera singer, and he's doing a live streamed opera from our office. So my apologies.
Got a little background.
Not at all. Don't worry about it.
A little background music.
Yeah.
I've got, I'm used to Zoom where I can kind of show the little images, but luckily I've got my iPad here. Hopefully we can kind of show something off. I know the picture's not so great, but
actually I can share screen here, I guess.
Oh, you can? Okay, good. I don't know this platform, so I apologize for that. But we have some warehouses that we really do follow Scottish tradition. We never use climate control, but we do kind of naturally control the environment that the barrels age in. We have 2 standard 4,000 barrels at a time warehouses right on our distillery site, right next to the distillery in the visitor center. But we also have a subterranean cellar that's underneath the distillery. That subterranean cellar kind of gets those barrels out of the heat and humidity. So while we never use climate control in any of these distilleries, that natural under the ground kind of gets them out of the heat. So some of our very oldest barrels and more experimental stuff, we kind of will put them into that warehouse where we can kind of control what happens to them over time.
Gotcha.
Well, in simple man terms, your barrels are aging under the ground. Is that what you're saying?
In the case of the one warehouse down below and some of the older barrels, yeah, they're going to age almost. Now, some barrels will start out in the above ground warehouses and then be moved downstairs when they're shown to be, behaving exceptionally, like any good distiller is going to taste.
Yeah.
And some barrels can come from the exact same tree and be different. It's just the way of the world. Wow. But yeah, I mean, you really have to kind of get them out of the heat. Some of these barrels really spring leaks after, 5 or 6 years, they start turning soft.
Wow.
I bet. Well, Koray jumped the gun. I think we should all have a taste as well.
So tell me what it's like.
All right. Did you have that picture you wanted to show, by the way?
Yes, I was trying, but I will do it in a second. I have to connect my other screen, I guess.
Oh, no worries.
No, it's easy.
In the case of these warehouses, you know, we have metal ricks. So in warehouses that you've seen that we have wooden ricks, we have stone floors. We don't use dunnage floors. They're really kind of traditional. You know what? One of my favorite things going to any distillery is as soon as you walk into the warehouse and you smell the flavor profile. That's like that's it right there. That's the initial signature of any good whiskey. It's found in the nose as soon as you walk into a warehouse.
Absolutely. And this whiskey that I'm sipping on right now, it really is like beautiful toast and some mango. It's really tropical, lots of mouthfeel. It's really beautiful.
Nirvana represents a whole new shifting category for us, as he had mentioned. You know, not only does it kind of come in as an excellent entry level, by not breaking the bank, you know, maybe somebody might be able to go to the store and say, you know, I want to try something new today, but am I going to spend $100? Am I going to spend $75? You know, Nirvana gets into the shelf at about $29.99. So it's a really phenomenal entry to this category, you know, without breaking the bank, without, you know, too tough of a pill to swallow. But on top of that, the really vanilla custard notes that come forward with it, they really hit you with tropical air. This really does smell like that warehouse.
Especially next week, for the people in California, we're gonna have a huge deal with the Nirvana. So
yeah, it's really is fantastic, and it's a nice, easy whiskey to drink. It's definitely something I would give to a whiskey drinker.
Okay, can you see the screen?
Unfortunately, no.
It might be the host.
You have to add it, I think, Ian.
There we go. Let's take a look.
There we go.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, cool.
So
Wonderful.
this is the.
That's a beautiful pot still.
Yeah.
Look how gorgeous.
Yeah, that's what we like. This is the wash still, which is technically the first still, and we have a reflux bowl in it. And as you can see, the line arm on the top, it's more than like 100 degrees going upwards, which increases the reflux in distillation, which ends up with a purer product. The first photo on the second photo on the very right is Michael looking up to the rick house, which is the one of two above ground level warehouses. And the bottom photo is taken from our underground cellar right now. Let's see if I have.
Can you make those larger?
Sorry?
No, I was asking if you could make those pictures.
Full screen them?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I will try. By the way, this is Goa. I just came up. And sorry, it has been a sales meetings now. Okay, I will try to do that right now. And show. Let's put in this way.
So would you say Nirvana is a great whiskey to try if you're new to single malts?
Definitely, it's a really good entry level whiskey. Let's put it that way. It's sweet as bourbon.
Yes.
Classic bourbon.
But it's still very much a barley whiskey. You know, you still get a lot of barley on it, which is great.
Okay.
Like you can definitely do that.
It doesn't have that heat and that spice that's obviously comes from the kind of more coarse grains, but you know, it's an excellent representative of that dry kind of bready note.
Yeah. Yeah, it really, really is.
This is as much as I can make it bigger, and this is our Nirvana, just to say.
This is your Nirvana whiskey. Let's take a look at that. It is a really beautiful package.
It is.
Yeah. So like these are my tasting notes and the company's tasting notes blended together. I feel a lot of beeswax in Nirvana, that honey feeling, and tropical fruits, of course. Like I love this whiskey. It's not your like superior high end whiskey to have it with a cigar, but it's a wonderful highball whiskey. It's a wonderful sipping whiskey throughout the day, on a hot day especially. So I think this is the right season for Nirvana too.
Nice. Yeah, make sure you save me some of that.
I absolutely will.
We'll definitely send you one. Don't worry.
Oh, perfect. You have my address. It's fine. Everything's fine.
Oh, no, my address.
So we actually are also working on an excellent cocktail book because, you know, one of the things that we haven't mentioned yet that we're really enticed by, you know, my background as a bartender tells me when I'm working with a whiskey, I want something cocktailable.
Yeah.
You know, that's a question I kind of wanted to bring up with you guys because I found Uncle Nearest it seems to be perfect for cocktails. With single malt, there's such a repertoire of those 5 classics that it gets a little done to death. With Nirvana, we're bringing that tropical atmosphere into the whiskey, and we can kind of intersect the new whiskey boom with the tiki culture and make some really interesting whiskey-inspired tiki cocktails.
I was so thinking that when Ian was expressing the tropical notes, I was like, tiki cocktail.
Absolutely.
Immediately what I went to.
A lot of fun to play with. We, as a matter of fact, have started to release some videos on our company YouTube of at-home, easy-to-make cocktails that are using Nirvana. But we've also just recently taken part in the Chilled Magazine cocktail competition and seen some phenomenal Paul John cocktails, including a finalist from Katie Renshaw in Chicago.
I saw Katie's cocktail. It looks so beautiful and delicious.
And she is so talented.
Yeah.
Cross your fingers.
Shout out to Katie, bring that trophy home to Chicago.
That's a pretty important competition for us because thanks to our importer and the Chilled Magazine, they put this out really fast. So what we did with the competition is we could aid bartenders. Like we chose 10 bartenders as the winner of the week for each brand, and we paid them $500 from Venmo. And the finalists will start, like 4 finalists will win $4,000 for the winner, $3,000 for the second place, $2,000 and $1,000 for the first 4 places. So we wanted to help our bartenders, which are our partners on the field, in a very fast way. And this is going to end, like 1 month of work is going to end on Friday. And we are happy to be in the final with Katie.
Well, congrats to that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Good luck to all the finalists.
What's kind of cool about that cocktail competition, and I thought it might be an interesting thing to discuss amongst us, is, that cocktail competition, we thought it was really perfect for the times. We want to help as many possible people as we can. And what I noticed was that there was some social media kind of kickback about the companies that were doing cocktail competitions while everyone's losing their job. Mm-hmm. What can a brand do to try to help? We want to kind of spread whatever we can help to do. So what I liked about that competition is it's 40 winners. If you're going to make an impact, that's the coolest thing about it, because, our heart goes out to everybody. I mean, just 3 or 4 years ago, I was going to be that guy behind the bar. So, I hope everybody gets back to work soon. I'm sure you guys agree.
Yes, for sure.
Are we going to try this?
No, I want to. Oh, okay.
Yeah, we should let's get to the Uncle Nearest. Have you had it, Koray? Have you had Uncle Nearest yet?
I had the 56 before with Carlson. When I was visiting LA, I didn't have 84 yet.
Okay. Well, I think unfortunately Devin couldn't snag a bottle of 84, but I think that's where we should start. It's a good. It's a little younger and it's a little lower proof. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Oh, Scott.
I love that sound.
So good.
So
well, Devin's American whiskey library is definitely wider than me. So he has a lot of American whiskeys.
Oh, my background, a lot more American whiskey background. I've always been a nut for Scotch, but my personal collection, some maybe behind these bottles, there might be a few bourbons.
Okay, I won't tell anyone. Your secret's safe with me.
Perfect.
So I'm going to let Chastity tell you a little bit about 84 because she talks about it so beautifully.
Oh, ain't you sweet?
You're right.
So our small batch aged in 84 is aged for 7 years and 93 proof. We just released it in the market in September.
Right about then.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing about this spirit is that Nearest Green's great-great-granddaughter, Victoria Edie Butler, she's our master blender. She blended this spirit for you. So we're very honored and proud to have her on our team. She's done, I think, a very beautiful job creating this spirit. It's very light-bodied. It's great for someone who is new to whiskey.
Especially that bourbon category. Mm-hmm. It's such a nice expression.
And me personally, I get. Well, tell me what you're smelling and tasting, Koray.
I'm smelling a lot of coconuts, and there's a buttery feeling in the nose, which is really pleasant. Mm-hmm. Then I'm getting that a little bit herbaceous feeling in the nose, which is opening up slowly. It's like ends up nuttier in the way.
Yeah.
And the palate starts a little bit burny. Then it dissolves into peppers, which is lovely. At the very back of the palate, it dissolves into like grapefruit zest and a little bit darker peppers.
You and I have a very similar palate, Koray.
That's
You guys are making me jealous.
I'm going to say that sounds like a very sophisticated palate.
Yeah.
There.
Also, all of that has become Uncle Nearest copy. We are now describing our whiskey.
I like that. I like the tasting notes.
I think this is a little bit more than entry level whiskey, if you ask me. Could be
Thank you, Victoria. Yay!
could be well integrated into a lot of cocktails in my mind too. But yeah, like hearing you said it's 7 years old, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Pretty good.
And one thing about this, the 1884, we're calling this our small batch whiskey, and roughly, hovering around the number of 20 barrels is what makes up this whiskey. So it truly is a small batch. And so while we are always going to strive for this kind of light floral, black peppery, herbaceous flavor, you're going to get some nuances as the batches come out. But it will be a true small blend, small batch blend.
Like our operation is not 20 barrel operation; it's a little bit higher than that. But we always have these batch numbers at the back of the bottles. Let's put it this way.
I got this guy right here.
So every Paul John bottle comes with a batch number.
Yep.
And the bottle number.
So right here.
Yeah.
I have batch number 3.
We have a 60,000 liter a year capacity, so it's huge. Yeah.
Okay.
As the products come throughout the years, you will feel some differentiations too. Like between batch 1 and batch 4 for the flagships, I had a lot of different bottles. I luckily had the batch 2 in Turkey when I first tried Paul John. There was no US, there was no this job. And I remember how young and how wild that was. And now we are on the batch 7, I guess. And that's like smoothens up. Like it's a different whiskey right now. So I love the fact that the batches are actually a showcase of whiskey being changed throughout the years. So that's perfect.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think you guys are pouring some 56.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you guys, what would be the signature that goes across all of your expressions?
I would say the 56. I don't know, Chastity, do you agree?
Or do you mean a flavor profile across all of our expressions?
Oh, a flavor profile?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. My apologies.
I'm going to definitely say some pepper, some spice. Some caramel, baking spices.
For me, there is a toasted coconut element that is expressed in both. Maybe a little differently because the 84 is a little softer and peppery. You're going to get it's a little bit more like natural coconut, where the 56 has just a few more years in the barrel. Our youngest barrel that's blending in that batch is going to be 9 years old. All that vanilla and all that caramel gives it kind of like a cake-like quality to it that's really beautiful. So for me, it's coconut that I know. I taste coconut. I know that I'm kind of living in the land of Uncle Nearest.
I'm going to be looking for that because I've as much Uncle Nearest as we drink. It's a note that I've had, a flavor profile that I've tasted. I'm gonna go back and think about that because a lot of times you think about something and then it pops up.
It's right there.
Okay. Yeah. 56 for me has some cherry pops at the very back.
Mm-hmm.
Like
yes. Yes.
And I definitely agree with the coconut thing. Toasted coconut is amazing. Like it's one of the first smells I get. And I think this has a little bit more depth into it. And it's just like has layers of flavors coming up. Well, I'm not an American whiskey drinker on normal times, but I can drink this for a long time.
I would hope that we give you a little bit of a turn, that you add a bottle to your shelf.
Devin is trying his best to convert me to American whiskey.
Perfect. Keep it up, Devin.
And he's in town. I take him out every now and then. But I was going to ask you guys, is it something that you disclose with the mash bill? It's a high corn to me, right?
Yeah, corn. Very high corn. We're using equal parts malted barley and rye to round it out. But that corn is well over 85. Mm-hmm. So the corn is there and very present, I think, especially in the 84. I think we get a lot more of it.
The depth of the whiskey really hits me on the sides, especially on the swallow. I mean, it just goes out to the cheeks. The cherry notes that he's mentioning, that that's very much there to me as well. But I think there's a lot of citrus here as well.
Oh yeah, you know, one of our colleagues at Uncle Nearest refers to the 56 as an old fashioned in a glass, because you get those baking spices like you would from the bitters. You get that citrus, and then the whiskey itself is just so round and bold. It has those caramel, those like deep red cherry notes that gives it a little bit of a round sweet. So it really is like all the things that you want in an old fashioned, I think.
Very true.
100 proof. It's obviously got the stiffness that I want for an old fashioned as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I want a punch, you know, when it comes to a bourbon or a Tennessee whiskey. But I think the Tennessee whiskey notes that are giving me like that kind of mellowed sweetness are still present. It's very balanced though.
Thank you. You know, the 84 for me is very much a porch sipper. It's great on a hot day, and the 56 is a nice fireside. Neat
I'm
pour.
scared of you, Ian, on a hot day. Drinking some
What are the price points on this?
What was that?
What are the price points on these whiskeys?
General average, you're going to see the 56 around 55 and 60, and the 84 you're going to see at 50. Generally speaking, yeah.
Great.
Oh, you know, like what 10-year-old American whiskeys are going in the market for now.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
compared to those, these are good prices.
Yeah.
That's really fast. Do we have any questions for our viewers?
I haven't got. No, I'm not getting questions. I'm getting a lot of love for Paul John and a lot of love for Uncle Nearest.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So you guys are doing something right. But chat today, we're talking about, you know, your whiskey comes from India, and she had a really great question about.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want you all to taste me through the Christmas edition that I have.
Oh, I will do that.
And then, perfect. And then my question for you was, you know, in the States we see a lot of women being more, well, you know, a lot of women being more involved in the whiskey industry. So I wanted to know, what does that look like in India? Are there female blenders, distillers? Are they involved in the industry in India?
As I'm aware, in our company, there are quite a few women who work. As far as in the distillery, I couldn't tell you if we have anybody in an actual technical position right now. Okay. As Koray mentioned before, our master distiller, Michael DeSouza, he's been with the company some 26 years. However, the company also owns a large distillery in Bangalore, where we make quite a few of the best 10 selling brands in the world. And I couldn't tell you either there. As far as Indian whiskey in general, when we talk about Indian whiskey, we're really only talking about 3 or 4 companies right now. Amrut's has been making whiskey there since 1948. Rampur was the second Indian single malt distillery, and Paul John. Those 3 really dominate the industry. Although Koray, I don't know if you've seen, Solon Gold has made it to the United States. So the category expands. In technical positions, I am not aware in our company of that of any women, which is unfortunate. I think they could bring a lot of love to the flavor profiles in our whiskeys.
Yeah, definitely.
But I can totally tell you that everything on social media that you see about Paul John, every PR movement, are coming from the hands of women.
Yeah. On the behind the scenes side, our PR director is a force. She's phenomenal. She's really influential person. I actually love working with Asha, and I hope you guys get to meet her next time she comes to Chicago.
Yeah, I would love to.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah, she's like one of the most amazing characters in the company, and she actually is one of the reasons that Paul John is in the US.
Oh, wonderful.
That's great.
And especially she might be one of the reasons that I have this job.
Even better. Yeah. I bet that's on a resume. Brought Koray to the US.
That's right. Koray in a social media aspect was doing a little bit of love for Paul John even before we got on board as brand ambassadors.
Perfect.
So you can tell the man is honest. He's been a cheerleader for the brand even before he was being paid to do so.
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Like the first time I tried this whiskey in Istanbul in 2014, I didn't feel any notes that I'm feeling right now. It was harsh. It was a little bit young. You could feel that. And the best part of this conversation was when I first met Paul John before everything happened, like 1 year before I got the job. He just told me like I felt the same notes and the whiskey was young. So you're right, and it's getting better every year. So I think the best part of the job for me is like I love the company because we are doing everything as transparent as we can. Like we don't have age statements on the bottle, but we are allowed to say all the ages, all the bottles, all the barrels, and every planning that we can do, which are not considered as like classified for now. So whatever we can say about our whiskeys, we tell it, and I love this about Paul John, and actually I love this about every whiskey brand who can tell those important things without any like lies or secrets. Just say it out loud because the client, the customers, they want to hear about it. The enthusiasts, they want to hear about it.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Christmas.
Good whiskey, no shtick.
Christmas edition started in 2018 for us.
Okay.
Goa used to be a Portuguese colony until 1964. And Portuguese influence brought out a lot of different aspects in that country land, which is one of them being architecture. The architecture in Goa is really European, really Portuguese. Then you have the music festivals, like Burning Man was actually a result of trance music festivals in Goa.
Oh, that's
You
cool.
never know that. Yeah. Then the third thing is the religion, because all of those British Empire impact and the Portuguese impact brought out the Christianity in the region. That's why a huge percentage of people living there are Christians and actually Catholics. So that's why we that's one of the reasons why we have a Christmas edition, just for the sake of knowledge. And we started doing this in 2018. It's a holiday whiskey. We bring out, we try to bring it in September to the United States. So 2018 was released in only Europe. We couldn't bring it up here to the States. However, last year we worked a lot and we brought out the 2019. So Devin showed the 2018. So 2018 was aged in first fill bourbon barrels, then finished for almost a year and a half in Oloroso casks, Spanish Oloroso casks. 2019, which is the greener version of that. This is aged for 5 years in bourbon barrels and 2 more years in Pedro Jimenez casks. So, you know.
What was that? What was that second cask?
Pedro Jimenez.
Oh,
PX.
okay. Cool.
So Oloroso gives you a little bit more nuttier profile. Meanwhile, Pedro Jimenez gives you chocolatey, sweeter, at the same time nuttier in our case, and peppery profile. So when you smell this, the Christmas edition, you will definitely feel the tannins coming from the barrel, then the dark forest fruits, and at the same time you will feel that praline with the touch of peat. There should be a sweet peat coming through the nose. But I think the best part is when you sip it.
Oh yeah, always.
So this is like a mouthful joy of Christmas. You will feel all those baking spices. You're feeling that very beautiful nuttiness at the same time, that chocolatey and leathery notes. It's like layers of whiskey, layers of flavors. And the finish is long, lingering, and warm.
That is, yeah, it is. It's really beautiful.
Nice. It is Christmas in a bottle.
Yeah.
You know, in the scale of sherries, you know, and Americans don't really love sherries, but you know, they're starting to come back, and especially from bartenders, right?
Yeah.
Now, bartenders bringing sherries into cocktails, first of all, works for me. But second of all, they're starting to explore this different scales. You know, just like you know, with whiskey, there's the white wine whiskeys, there's the red wine whiskeys. And in sherry, when you get to the PX end of the spectrum, we're talking about dessert. We're talking about sultana raisins and chocolatey notes, hints of coffee. So much the flavors that we kind of associate with Christmas, that kind of fruitcake spice. And this one really embodies it. I love the Christmas 2019. You know, I really enjoyed the 2018, but I got to tell you, PX is my kind of whiskey finish.
Yeah. I mean, it works so well.
Hence, we are having the bottles I showed you. So this is the PX, and this is the Oloroso. So they are both like aged firstly in bourbon barrels, then finished for 2 years in PX and Oloroso. And these are going to be our new whiskeys and give you a different flavor of the sherry, sherry flavor that we are using, PX and Oloroso. Those are going to be fabulous, especially like PX. I love it a lot again. And this year, 2020 Christmas edition is going to be a different barrel finishing, which we are really excited about. And hopefully, if everything goes all right, we'll be having it by September or October, I guess.
Ian, I wonder if I could ask, is Uncle Nearest doing any work with barrel finishes? A lot of American whiskeys are touching on the exploration.
You know, it's a tricky thing to do with American whiskey, as you know. Just how you can finish and what you can call it kind of changes with that. So right now, what we really are focusing on is making great Tennessee whiskey to tell the story of Uncle Nearest and what he was able to accomplish in his lifetime, and have a whiskey that's reflective of that history. So that's where we are. We've just released our 1884. We have the 1884. We have the 56, which is going to be our stable workhorse. Is always going to be what our whiskeys revolve around, and then we also have our single barrel that comes out periodically. So right now I'm going to say not so much, but we're definitely focusing on the category of Tennessee whiskey and best showcasing what that whiskey can be.
All right.
Now,
guys, by the way, sorry, Devin, 56 is a coconut bomb right now.
Yeah.
As it sits out in the air a little bit, I noticed myself. Yeah.
Well, I love pina colada.
It's just one of those like shower gels, coconut shower gels that you love to smell and you want to eat. That's like that right now.
Absolutely.
What are you doing in the bathroom, man?
Well, you know what, guys? It's been such a pleasure to talk to you tonight. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for talking about your whiskey. It's so exciting to hear people breaking new ground, like with the category of Indian whiskey and bringing it to a place that has yet to really explore it. Just like us, we're trying to tell this story, talk about our whiskey, talk about Tennessee whiskey in a new way. So I say thank you. We're going to close out the show tonight. I encourage you guys to stick around with Chassie and I, and we can have a little chat afterwards.
Sure.
But to all of our viewers, thanks for joining us tonight, and I hope you go enjoy a bottle of Paul John and chase it with a bottle of Uncle Nearest.
Yeah, and drink honorably, guys.
Definitely drink honorably. Cheers.
You guys have turned us into buyers.
Perfect.
I have to do this.
Cheers.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.